Yay, what's up everybody? It's Wednesday, February 24th. Big day up today in the market. Big day up. Actually, we opened lower. I sent out an email saying, that we saw the bottom in there yesterday. Market took off today. I know this stuff gets repetitive, but that's how we learn, through repetition. Fiscal situation, as I've been saying now for almost a year, actually longer than a year. I mean, last year with the stimulus, the fiscal support went into hyperdrive, and it's been that way ever since, and there's going to be more. So, I mean, that is what is sustaining the market rally and what is sustaining the economy. Now remember, a lot of the economy is still closed down, but as COVID cases come down and more opens up, economic activity is going to pick up. The inflation trade, which, again, this is something I was talking about for over a year. And certainly I, accelerated that view or doubled down on that view last year with the stimulus. And I have been saying that, again, with all the fiscal, that's what's going to happen. But now you see that the inflation trade, that has caught on big time in the mainstream. What's funny is that a couple of weeks ago, and I think I made a video about this. As a matter of fact, I did make a video about this. Wall Street said, that's it for the inflation trade, it is over. And again, I mentioned it was a commentary on behavior. This is exactly, this kind of behavior, this lack of patience, this short-termism, this neediness that everything should happen immediately, like now, tomorrow, or next week at the latest. This is not just a behavioral problem of individual investors, of unsavvy investors. This runs all the way up the canyons of Wall Street to the major investment banks. Same thing. Don't think that they're any superior or they have some other mode of operating, or their psychology or their behavior is any different, because it's not. It's exactly the same thing as the unsophisticated. As a matter of fact, sometimes the unsophisticated investors, they're a lot smarter or they're a lot more patient than the guys on Wall Street or the people on Wall Street. So yeah, a few weeks ago, that was a headline. The reflation trade is over. And I said at that time, this is classic. I mean, you got to go against that. Same thing with the dollar bulls. That happened a few weeks ago. We had that rally in the dollar, that counter trend short covering rally in the dollar. And there were the headlines once again. The dollar's coming back. The dollar spikes. As a matter of fact, this morning, I saw a headline saying the dollar is spiking because of higher interest rates. The 10-year Treasury yield hit 1.45%. And we closed lower on the dollar today. So, they go to this minute little time frame where price action is really just noise. It's random. It's chaotic. It has no correlation to underlying fundamentals necessarily. I mean, you need to step back. You need to have a longer term view and the bigger picture view. That is your roadmap. Okay? If you don't have that big picture view, if you don't have that understanding of conditions and policy, then you're going to be easily fooled. You're going to be thrown off course all the time. It's like you're flying blind. You don't know where you're going. And every little headline is going to steer you in some direction or some other direction, and you're going to be off course. And you're going to get chopped up. At best, you're going to get lucky once in a while, but then you're just going to end up giving all that back. So let's talk a little bit about the, there's an analogy I use, and maybe I mentioned this before, I'm not sure. There's the weather and there's the climate. Okay? Weather is something that could change day to day. Climate is something that is predictable. Weather I equate to, either daily or short-term moves in the market, or even consensus or market psychology. For example, you could be in a bear market, let's say the dollar, or you could be in a bull market, let's say the stock market, and then you have a pullback, right? Or in the dollar's case, you can have a rally. That's like saying in winter, in northern climates, in the northern hemisphere, winter is cold, but occasionally you could have a few warm days. That's the weather. But the climate says winter in the northern hemisphere is cold. So yeah, that could happen. You can have a deviation from the underlying fundamentals for a period of time. And that period of time could vary. I mean, it could be like a half a day, like today, or it can be a couple of years. Actually, we saw that with the dollar rally. I talked about that yesterday, that, Trump's trade war, like everybody jumped on that. Everybody jumped on that. Oh, there's a trade war, the dollar is bullish. Why? Show me what changed as a result of those policies. Nothing changed. As a matter of fact, it just went worse in the opposite direction. The trade deficit actually got worse. It expanded. If you look back in the mid to late 1990s, when Clinton started to run a budget surplus, I mean, that was a powerfully bullish fundamental change in the direction of the dollar. I mean, it went up from 1995 to, I believe, 2001. That was a 6-year rally based on the budget going from deficit to surplus. I mean, you had actual fundamental conditions at that time which said, hey, you got to be long the dollar. But Trump's trade war, that was just a headline thing. And I kept saying throughout that whole entire period, this is a headline trade. This is a headline trade. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen with those tariffs. It is not going to happen with the fiscal expansion. The deficit, in other words. So you have to stay focused on that stuff. That's your roadmap. If you stay focused on that, on the big picture, on the conditions, on policy. That's why I always say now, we're in the first year of the Biden administration. He's not gonna become a fiscal conservative. Now he might next year if he sees that as something being politically expedient, like, if the Democrats need something, or if the Republicans raise the deficit as a political issue going into the midterm election. Biden, don't forget, and I've said this in the past, he is like, I won't even say a closet fiscal conservative. He has a long history of, openly advocating for fiscal conservatism, right? Social Security's on the table, Medicare's on the table, Medicaid, like we got to cut everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. He said those things in the past. But right now, I keep telling you that, right now, that's just not going to happen in the first year. Now, he might not be able to, do his 1.9 trillion. And he is a bipartisan kind of guy, so he might try to, work something out with the Republicans where the figure comes in lower. But as I've said so many times, the current level of fiscal support, even if there wasn't any more fiscal to come, just right now is sufficient to sustain things, maintain the trends that we're seeing. I mentioned the climate and the weather before because, a lot of people jumping on this inflation trade. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if it paused for a period of time. As a matter of fact, that would be, I'd see that kind of as a good thing because it would give an opportunity to add on. But believe me, if that happened, you'd see the headlines, inflation trade over, it's done, deflation is the real thing we got to worry about. I mean, that will all pop up again. So we'll see. But again, I cannot impress upon you, like, I cannot overemphasize how important it is to have that big picture and to understand what's going on. Because then you have, the fortitude to stick with those big macro trends, to, roll out a strategy and execute a strategy as the trend, kind of plays out. And that's how big money is made. I mean, patience, sitting there, strategizing correctly, executing correctly. That's how it's done. There's no quick way to do it. People think there's a quick way. People think there's shortcuts. Like in everything else, you get chopped up. You don't succeed. It's a waste of time. They think it's the quick way, but actually, if it's a quick way to anything, it's the quick way to ruin. Hey, my new podcast is up. The link is right here in the description below. Listen to it. Pass it around. Share it. See everybody tomorrow. Bye-bye.